Out here, a Rocky Mountain Tale, Northern Colorado Territory, January 1862. The campfire danced in the snow-dusted night air as First Lieutenant Jimmy Derringer, wide awake for the wee morning hour, gazed into the flames, entranced. Fidgeting with the saddle ring of his rifle as it rested loaded and ready against his chest, he replayed the events of the past week in his mind, biting a sore into his bottom lip as he mulled, searching for something he'd missed, some aspect of things that could clear away the sense of doom in his heart, fiercening with every minute in pace with the worsening storm. Though the wind was mild, Jimmy was becoming quite cold, frozen to the bone to be sure, and he worried that he may have strayed off course in the whiteout. Now in the wee hours of its third uninterrupted day and growing more severe by the hour, this was all less than ideal, no doubt, but the young cavalryman and seasoned outdoorsman had concerns of a far more troubling nature than of storm or of steppe, as he puzzled into the campfire's prancing glow. For Jimmy knew with a reluctant, stubborn certitude that perhaps only just off beyond the trees, something stalked him, something as ancient as the eons and wicked. A week prior, on the first day of the journey, Jimmy had ridden out from Camp Collins with orders from Company B of the 9th Kansas Cavalry, off to take over the winter as the newly minted ranger of the Mountain Wilderness Patrol, replacing a fallen colleague. Promoted to his rank only just recently, Jimmy had been eager to dust his boots and prove himself a capable first lieutenant on his first true assignment, and this performance was to be evaluated as became painfully clear upon his arrival at the riverside camp of his new riding companion and superior officer with whom Jimmy had been told to rendezvous at the base of the Rocky Mountains. The campsite had appeared vacant when Jimmy had ridden in, and reckoning that his new patrol partner was off answering nature's call or something of the like, Jimmy called out, announcing his arrival. In an instant, Jimmy was thrown to the ground, blinded in the late morning sun and choking for breath, as a rope noose bitten tightly around his neck. As suddenly as the ambush had commenced, the chokehold loosened, and a firm hand from behind grabbed Jimmy's wrist, yanking him to his feet. Still gagging, Jimmy spun around to meet his attacker. "If I was an Injun, a loudmouth like you'd be headed for my unsavory month, son. It's how long a kid like yourself will live after they take your scalp, and kind as they are, they'll make sure you see every minute of that month," scolded the tall, lanky old-timer, recoiling his lasso rope. "I'm Major Frank White, and you'll be riding west of me, got it?" Blushing with embarrassment, Jimmy nodded meekly. "First Lieutenant Jimmy Derringer reporting, sir." He was awestruck by the sheer brute strength the stringy codger had. "It's all very good. Now get yourself sorted to ride out, and fix your collar, son. You're a ranger of the mountain patrol now, for heaven's sake," Frank ordered as he moved to begin packing his horse. "Yes, Major," returned Jimmy, trying to feign the confidence that had been knocked out of him. The Major glanced over his shoulder as he pulled his saddle knots tight. "No more of that yes, Major hog shit, son. You call me Frank from here out. Where we're headed, there's no cavalry and no law, and certainly nobody to give one donkey's puddles a piss about your fancy new rank, no mine for that matter, understood?" Jimmy nodded, still unsure whether he was getting tough love or an unsavory portrait of his new commanding officer. As they mounted their horses and trotted westward along the river through the thin, brittle January ground frost set in high relief against the pale blue sky. "That bit about the Indians and the scalp, you haven't seen things like that, have you, Frank?" From ahead, Frank peered back over his shoulder at Jimmy and smiled mischievously. "Son, you won't believe what you find out here," he barked with a chuckle. As the men rode through the second day, Frank grilled Jimmy on this matter and that, seemingly in attempts to poke and prod, feeling around for the young lieutenant's weak spots, and a spot for a late morning meal at a small river bow served as a venue for what had seemingly become the pastime of the trip. Having finished his fill, a meek feast in line with his slender stature, Frank commenced polishing his carbine with a handkerchief as he ran into Jimmy. "I see you brought a full butt of .44 cal for your leather gun there. What did you think we'd be up against? Banditos?" pressed Frank mockingly. "Son, the trouble out here sees you long before you see it. Matter of fact, let me ask you something, boy. Do you know the purpose of this here patrol?" "I think so. Yes, sir. We ride to assist lost souls and folks in bad business out here, for prospectors and trappers and their kin," Jimmy replied with a raised brow, not entirely sure what Frank was after. "That was my impression, anyhow." "Yeah, sometimes, sure," replied Frank, unsatisfied. "Most times, though, the bad business is long gone, and there aren't any folks left need assisting. You know why they had you bring that spade there?" he asked gruffly as he pointed to the shovel slung to Jimmy's saddle pack. "It's because we's the last dispatches for folks that meet their ends out here. Usually, the only assistance the folks we find will need is gonna be our help digging a nice deep hole. We retrieve last legacies of parties far beyond helping, son. And most times, such folks' fates are as good as guessing." Jimmy tried to hide his grimace in response to Frank's, frankness. Seemingly feeding off of Jimmy's unease, Frank laughed with a sadistic sort of sarcasm. "You sucker, green kid. You won't believe what you'll find out here." To be the best of Jimmy's memory, the third day was when the tone of the entire adventure had moved beyond the mere frustration of Frank's lecturing and into a place more ominous. The late afternoon was gray, imbued with thick billowing cloud cover. Though the morning's ride had been uneventful, the casual atmosphere evaporated as the riders came upon a frosty river-split meadow. A herd of elk could be seen on the meadow's far edge, just next to where the river flowed out from the woods, but something about the scene was unnervingly off, though Jimmy could not discern exactly how until they came to within about 100 yards. The elk herd, of some 15 healthy-sized adults at fewest, was lifeless but frozen in place, as solid as blocks of ice, with each covered in a finger-thick transparent ice shell that glistened as if for a candy coating. But it was their pose that shook Jimmy the most deeply. The herd seemed to be frozen in recoil, terrified. The faces of some were frozen in a petrified shriek. Others were ossified into the beginnings of a turn and run as they crammed and clambered over each other to get away. But each and every elk's glossy dead eyes were locked in sheer horror onto a single spot at the edge of the woods. They had been fleeing something. Mother Mary in hell. What did they see? Probed Jimmy, anxiously gripping the horn of his saddle as he solicited for answers, even condescending ones. What in the world came out of those woods? From his horseback, Frank grinned in an especially unsettling way as he raised his hands, gesticulating immense size. "Jimmy, look around you. This place is all the memory, and we are guests here. You best not forget that, son. We're here because it allows us. Now follow close up," he said, nudging his horse into a trot with a light kick and a flick of his reins. That night at camp, Jimmy rehashed the elk herd again, wondering out loud. He'd hoped that Frank would yield some explanation, if just to salve his poor riding partner's nerves, but Frank waved away Jimmy's concerns. "Sure, it would have made perfect sense if you could have been there the moment it happened, kid. That's always how things like that are. he said, standing up from the campfire and strolling over to his pitch. Seen a million things, just a stranger out here, or stranger. Like I keep telling you, son, you won't believe what you'll find out here. You should sleep on it, he said, climbing inside his tent.